3 spine-chilling true stories of terrifying encounters while home alone. Secrets exposed. On a seemingly ordinary Saturday night, Sarah's heart raced, her breath shallow. As a single mother, she cherished those rare moments of alone time until now. The house, once a sanctuary, felt more like a trap. First, it was the garage door. A slight gust brushed past her, sending shivers down her spine. She was sure she had closed it before the kids left. And now, it stood ajar, swaying slightly as though beckoning her closer. She rubbed her arms, feeling the prickling unease creep in. Gnawing at her thoughts, the chill gripped her as she wandered through the quiet house. Every little sound stood out too sharply. Was that distant whispering? Her imagination? No, the faint rustle echoed behind her, like the silence had been disturbed. Panic clawed at her throat. She suddenly remembered Mr. Patterson, a supposedly benign handyman, who had been in and out of her life for years. She had entrusted him with repairs, but the whispers of the neighbors lingered in her mind. Shadows danced in her memory, revealing hints of a dark past she only half remembered. Night descended, thick and oppressive. The flickering lights overhead matched her pulse, strobing in sync with the rising dread. Outside, winds whipped up, rustling dead leaves on the porch like ghostly fingers. Redirecting her attention, Sarah tried to focus on the kitchen, steam rising from the pot she prepared. Yet, the fleeting movement outside the window had her heart pounding anew. Just a shadow, she told herself. Just a trick of the night. But the feeling of being watched was persistent, heavy in the air. Suddenly, a creak echoed from the hallway. Was it the house settling? Or someone moving? Her fingers trembled, hovering over her phone as she fought back the instinct to call for help. With a deep breath, she mustered the courage to investigate. The bathroom door, slightly ajar, swung ever so subtly. She was certain it had been closed. Each step felt like her last as dread pooled in her stomach. Someone was inside her home. Panic surged. She dialed 911, voice shaking as she detailed her fears. The officer's voice felt distant, impersonal. "Stay calm and lock the doors," he urged. Stay calm? The very notion shattered her sense of safety. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah began to catch glimpses of distorted figures, fleeting shadows slipping just out of sight. The familiar warmth of her home was now a house of horrors. With every creak, her heart sank deeper into a pit of anxiety. Suddenly, in the corner of the room, she remembered the locked box in the basement her late husband's, hidden away from prying eyes. The basement that had always seemed filled with memories and dust now felt like an abyss of urgency. The night thickened, the air growing cold. In a final push against fear, she decided to venture downstairs. But before she could move, a chilling draft swept through the living room, smothering the last flicker of light. Darkness swallowed her whole. It was suffocating. And in that silence, she heard a whisper, unmistakably familiar, but sounded unsettlingly wrong. "You were never alone." Sarah, the night stretched on, a harbinger of secrets ready to be unveiled, with shadows waiting just beyond her reach. The whisper hung in the air, echoing in her mind. Panic surged through her veins, visceral and palpable. This isn't happening, she thought, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The familiar contours of her living room felt ominous. It was as if the darkness had gained weight, pressing against her skin, urging her to stay frozen. With a shaky inhale, she gripped her phone tightly, its light flickering weakly. The constant drone of her heartbeat mixed with the silence, a haunting symphony of anxiety. "Stay calm," she chanted silently, but the words felt hollow in her throat. Sarah took a tentative step toward the basement door, every creak of the floorboards loud enough to betray her assent. The memories of her husband flooded back, their laughter echoing in this very space, now tainted with fear. Did he know what lay beneath? What secrets had he buried in that locked box? The questions clawed at her mind. Reaching the basement door, she hesitated. The doorknob felt cold, a a reminder of the chilling air swirling around her. She swung it open, the door protesting with a long, drawn-out creak. The blackness beyond was thicker, an abyss she couldn't comprehend. Panic bubbled back up as thoughts of that whisper clawed closer. She had to find the box and confront whatever had been welling within its confines. With every step down into the darkness, the air turned colder, heavier. Each breath felt like it could escape her, lost to the void awaiting her below. She flicked the flashlight on her phone, a feeble beam cutting through the dark, revealing peeling walls and old boxes that hadn't seen daylight in years. Why did I wait so long to check this? She wondered. Fear wrestled with the whisper in her mind, urging her further into the abyss. Suddenly, a soft, shuffling noise echoed from the corner of the basement. Her heart stopped. It was too deliberate, too close. "Who's there?" she croaked, her voice trembling. No response, just more rustling, and then silence. Her breath quickened. She moved faster, the beam of light twitching erratically over the cold concrete floor. That box, where was it? Memories of laughter faded, replaced by memories of hushed conversations, secrets traded in the dark. Was that why she had sealed it away? To keep the darkness and the truths hidden? Finally, she spotted it, the locked box, covered in dust and cobwebs, sitting as if awaiting her return. But before she could reach it, the sound shifted behind her, a soft, mocking chuckle. She froze, her breath hitching in her throat. No, it wasn't he, just the shadows. Something was watching her. Her instincts kicked in. Grabbing the box, she whipped around, gripping the lid, adrenaline surging. But the basement door slammed shut, sealing her in with whatever lurked in the dark. Heart racing, she clawed at the door, but it wouldn't budged. In the darkness, she heard the familiar whisper again, now closer, more menacing. "I'm here, Sarah, and I don't want you to leave." Terror coursed through her. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices weaving inseparably into her thoughts. She fumbled with the box, the key digging into her palms, her only chance to unravel the truth before whatever was waiting could find her. "Open it!" It screamed in her mind, a chorus of urgency. What terrible secrets lay inside? Would she find the truth or the very thing she feared? As her fingers trembled at the latch, shadows thickening around her, the realization boiled within. Uncovering the truth might not provide relief, but invite something far worse. "Open it!" The voices chanted. She braced herself, ready to confront whatever waited inside. What would be unleashed could shatter her world forever. The lock clicked, and for a fleeting moment, a sliver of hope pierced her fear. But it was quickly swallowed by the shadows. She lifted the lid slowly, the sound of creaking hinges blending with the hushed voices whispering for her to release them. Inside lay a mishmash of objects, old photographs, letters yellowed with age, and something wrapped in a decrepit cloth. She could barely breathe. The darkness felt alive, crawling over her skin. Each item seemed to pulse with a life of its own, making her stomach churn. The first photograph caught her attention. It was a picture of her husband, younger, smiling, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. A knot tightened in her chest. Who were these people? A wave of anger surged. Had he hidden more than just memories? Had he kept secrets from her? She flipped the photo over, only to find it blank, as if it held no answers at all. Then her eyes landed on the wrapped object. Slowly, she unwound the fabric, heart thudding erratically in her chest. As the cloth fell away, she gasped. It was a doll, but not any doll. Its eyes seemed almost to follow her, staring with an unnatural intensity. The shiver raced down her spine. What the hell? She breathed, feeling an oppressive weight in the air. The whispers shifted, growing frantic. Find us, they urged, a verse echoing in her mind, leaving her breathless. Suddenly, a loud thump came from behind her, jolting her out of her thoughts. The sound was ominous, deliberate. Sarah whipped around, almost slipping on the cold floor. The shadows shifted, twisting, revealing vague forms that danced on the edges of her vision. Her heart threatened to tear from her chest. There was no way she was alone. "Stop it!" she shouted, voice shaking. "What do you want?" But the basement swallowed her words, leaving an unsettling silence in their wake. Gathering her courage, she reached for the doll again. Maybe it was the key to unraveling the connections buried down here. Her hands trembled, and just as her fingers touched the doll's surface, it let out a low, guttural laugh, a sound that wasn't possible. She recoiled, adrenaline flooding her veins. The laughter rang through her like ice water. "I want you, Sarah," it taunted, the voice distorting into something unrecognizable. "You've opened the box. Now you must face us." Panic had a grip on her throat. She dove back to the door, ramming it with her shoulder, but it held firm, mocking her attempts at escape. The whispers surged back, drowning her thoughts. They had turned vicious, angry sounds clamoring for attention. As she struggled, she felt the shadows creep closer, suffocating her thoughts one by one. The box, the whisper, how had she unleashed this nightmare? Her eyes darted back to the box. What other horrors awaited her inside? Locked secrets that had taunted and tormented her husband? She had to know. Whatever she faced, would it truly be worse than the growing dread surrounding her? "Sarah," they hissed, almost lovingly. "Stay with us forever." A vision flashed in her mind, a gruesome end, eternally trapped alongside the anguished souls surrounding her. An insatiable dread filled her as she pulled the doll close, battling against the otherworldly grip tightening around her. "I want to let you take me," she screamed, clenching her fists. Just as she turned her attention back to the box, the floor beneath her vibrated with malice. In that moment of panic and despair, the shadows lunged forward, and she was left with one harrowing choice: fight or surrender. In the thickening darkness, she prepared herself to wade deeper into the abyss. What else was hidden in that box? What would she uncover if she dared to look again? As the shadows lunged, a chilling wave of cold swept over her, leaving her breathless. Sarah's instincts kicked in. She had to act now. With a fierce determination, she turned back to the box, heart racing, knowing she couldn't let fear drown her. The doll lay still in her trembling hands, its glassy eyes glinting in the dim light. Something deep within her screamed to throw it away, but she couldn't shake the feeling it held the answers she desperately sought. The whispers grew louder, a jumbled cacophony she couldn't decipher, yet felt etched in the fibers of her being. "Release us, help us." The urgency was suffocating. She glanced around the basement, the corners cloaked in darkness. The unsettling shadows lurked closer, almost breathing in rhythm with her own panic. A beam of moonlight streamed through a cracked window, illuminating her surroundings just enough to make out a few more objects: a rusty key, a cracked mirror, and a small velvet pouch that seemed to pulse with energy. Instinct drove her to the pouch. She unfastened its drawstring and tipped it over, spilling its contents onto the floor. Small bones scattered, a collection of fingers, knuckles, and what appeared to be a tiny skull. The whispers crescendoed, blending into a haunting melody of longing that wrapped around her like a noose. "No, no," she gasped, stumbling back as the realization of their intentions sunk in. With a screech that pierced the dismal silence, the doll jerked in her grip, lurching to life. Its mouth moved as if it were talking, but no sound escaped. It was as if the voices of the trapped spirits channeled through it, urging her to understand something she couldn't quite grasp. "Figures, they were sacrificed," she murmured, her mind racing with horror. Each revelation added to her dread. But were they innocents? Or had they sought revenge? Before she could process, the shadows began to swirl violently, the air thick with an unnatural energy. Sarah focused hard on the doll, desperate to find answers. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, her voice raw with fear. The laughter returned, a collection of haunting echoes that bounced off the concrete walls, chilling her to the bone. In a rush of terrifying clarity, she remembered the photo of her husband. His vibrant smile now twisted in her mind, the warmth replaced by cold betrayal. Had this all been a part of his secret? Could he have summoned this darkness? She felt the ground tremble beneath her, as if it were responding to her thoughts. "Stop! I don't want this," she cried, throwing the doll against the wall. It shattered on impact, shards flying, and for a moment, silence reigned. As if held in breathless suspense, the shadows stilled, retreating as if waiting for a command. But then something began to crawl from the corners of the room, fingers, long and bony, reaching out from the darkness. They waved slowly, beckoning her with an insidious longing. "Sarah," they hissed, soft and seductive. "Come play with us." Her breath quickened as dread seeped in like a rising tide. The shadows shifted, forming shapes she couldn't bear to look at, disfigurements of pain and sorrow. It didn't matter that the doll was destroyed. Whatever had been unleashed was still hungry. She felt their pull, a desperation she recognized all too well from the darkness of her own heart. Suddenly, the wooden door behind her splintered, as if her fear had given it strength. It swung open with a crash, revealing a dimly lit staircase leading up to the house. Freedom? Or an invitation deeper into the horror? Sarah's heart raced as the lingering voices urged her toward the darkness. You can never escape, they taunted. She stood at the threshold, each pounding heartbeat echoing like a countdown. Where to go now? Back into the fray or into the unknown? Each choice promised danger, yet offered hope of a glimpse into the truth that had torn her life apart. With every ounce of resolve she could muster, she made her decision, knowing she had to face whatever lay ahead. But as she stepped forward, a whisper slid with the wind. We're coming for you. What awaited her at the top of the stairs? Would she find escape or become one with the shadows? The air thickened as Sarah took a step onto the creaking staircase, each step echoing like the sound of a countdown in her mind. The wood groaned beneath her, as if warning her against ascending. Shadows danced along the walls, distorting reality into a nightmarish landscape. She could almost hear them whispering her name, enticing her with promises of secrets long buried. Please, let me find the truth, she murmured, forcing the words past her trembling lips. As she climbed higher, a sudden draft blew through the staircase, extinguishing the flickering remnants of her courage. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic reminder that she was still alive, yet surrounded by the dead. The whispers wormed their way through her thoughts, desperate and haunting. Turn back. Sarah, come play with us. She thought of the photo, her husband's smiling face, and felt bile rise in her throat. Was he involved? Had he known? Each question stacked upon the last, brewing an overwhelming chaos in her mind. Reaching the landing, she pushed the door open. The room was cloaked in shadow, just like the basement, but something was undeniably different. The air felt charged, alive with an energy that made her skin prickle. She stepped inside, her breathing quickening. The room was filled with remnants of a life once lived, dusty furniture, forgotten memories. And at the center, a mirror stood tall and unscathed, reflecting the faint light of the moon. Despite the dust that layered it, the mirror shimmered, almost as if beckoning her closer. Look deeper, it seemed to whisper, its surface swirling with shadows that flickered like gas flames. Drawing closer, Sarah hesitated. What if it showed her the truth? Or worse, the darkness lurking beneath? Sarah, help us! The voices cried out suddenly, wrapping around her like a vice. She flinched, stepping back instinctively. Shadows from the mirror slithered toward her, tendrils inching along the floor, reaching for her feet like desperate hands. Leave me alone, she screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the cacophony of whispers that filled the room, each soul crying out in pain, a plea for liberation. An image burst forth from the depths of the mirror, her husband's face twisted in agony. It flickered, revealing flashes of him standing above the doll, chanting in a language she couldn't understand, surrounded by the same tiny skull she had found in the basement. Her breath hitched in her throat. The realization was a dagger to her heart. No, no, you did this? But the vision morphed, shifting into another scene. It showed her, drowning in a graveyard of shadowy figures, her own twisted face locked in despair. The air screamed with danger, growing colder, a promise of chaos to come. She staggered back, crashing into the door, desperate to escape the nightmare consuming her. But it wouldn't stop. The mirror pulsed with power, demanding her attention, her fear. Sarah, voices echoed from every corner, circling her. Join us, as she clawed at the handle, an iron grip wrapped around her heart, squeezing tighter. The whispers rose into a feral chant, blurring reason with madness. Get out, she shrieked, slamming the door behind her as she fled down the staircase. But at the bottom, the basement door stood ajar, shadows swirling around its edges, beckoning her back. She hesitated, heart racing, torn between the pull of the darkness and the thin thread of light that still flickered within her. She paused for a breath, sweat pooling at the small of her back. Had the doll truly been destroyed? Had she halted whatever curse had been unleashed? The shadows thrashed wildly behind her, needing an answer, urging her to make a choice. With a deep inhale, she turned to face the door, where the shadows were dancing in frantic anticipation. The whispers called, clamoring for her to come back. Sarah, the truth waits. We're not finished with you yet. What lay ahead? Would she confront the darkness and uncover the horrifying truth, or succumb to the chaos? The basement door swung wide, revealing a darkness so thick it seemed to press against Sarah's chest, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The pulsating shadows rippled like a living entity, a silent demand that pulled her closer, and in that moment, she felt herself teetering on the edge of a precipice. Just a peek, she whispered, words tumbling out almost against her will. With shaky steps, she crossed the threshold, her heart racing like a warped metronome. The space was colder than she remembered, the walls unsettlingly close, as if they were leaning in to listen to her fears. Once inside, a flicker from the far corner caught her eye. The doll, her husband's gift, sat silently, untouched, perched on a dusty table like a silent sentinel. Its eyes glinted in the dull light, lifeless yet somehow aware. Sarah had believed she destroyed it, reduced it to fragments that scattered into the void. Yet, here it was, whole and ominous, as if mocking her. Stop it, she urged herself. It can't hurt you. But like a moth drawn to an unforgiving flame, she found herself inching closer. The whispers swelled, intertwining with her thoughts like a symphony of anguish. You freed us, now come play, they cooed, luring her deeper into dread. The walls cracked and groaned, recounting the tales of those who had come before, unsuspecting souls entrapped in the mansion's malevolence. Suddenly, a glimmering reflection caught her eye. The mirror again. But this time, it was pulled into the room, standing before her, swathed in shadows. Its surface shimmered, alive with flickering images, people, places, memories. Painful fragments spilled forth from the glass, swirling into coherence, revealing horrifying reenactments of the souls imprisoned within. Sarah, a voice wailed, desperate and familiar. It took her a moment, but her heart sank as she recognized it. It was her husband's. You need to help me. No, she managed, shaking her head, overwhelmed. She backed away, frantic, yet the walls seemed to shift, blocking her escape. The shadows swirled tighter, pulsating with whispers that grew more urgent, terrifying. We're all here, Sarah? Find us. The voices merged into a single, piercing entity that cut through her resolve. Her breath caught. How many had been there before her? How far back did this curse stretch? Why? She choked, despair creeping through her. What do you want? Join us, they screamed, echoing, a chilling choir that filled her mind with visions of despair. Suddenly, the doll's head turned sharply, its expression twisting into a grotesque smile that made her stomach churn. A flash of light ignited the basement, blinding her momentarily, and then darkness followed, wrapping around her like a shroud. The scene shifted again, and Sarah found herself staring into her own face, twisted by terror, defiantly pleading with her past self, don't trust them. They will consume you. But before she could process the warning, the vision shattered, and she was thrown back into her body. The basement felt even colder, darker, a heavy weight settling on her chest. In that moment, she understood the truth. The doll was not merely an object. It was a vessel, a trap for the lost souls, for her husband included. And she was its chosen link, the key that bound them all. With a sudden surge of panic wrapped in determination, Sarah darted toward the basement stairs. Yet as she reached for the railing, she felt icy fingers clutching her arm, pulling her back. Stay with us, they breathed as shadows enveloped her. Will she escape the grip of the darkness, or become another lost soul within its ravenous embrace? The choice hovered precariously over her as she struggled against the pull. The icy grip tightened around Sarah's arm, the shadows whispering promises of eternity laced with torment. Panic surged through her chest, a wild, staccato rhythm pounding in her ears. She wrestled against the unseen force, but it held fast, creating a fragile barrier between escape and the abyss beyond. Let me go? She gasped, desperate. The voices around her distorted, morphing into a cacophony of laughter fused with cries, echoing her fear like a twisted nursery rhyme. The doll's ghastly grin widened, its painted lips forming the words of her failure. You are ours. With sudden clarity, she remembered the breaking point, the shattering of the doll. the release that had come only after immense struggle. The moment where fear turned to fury. Fueled by that memory, she twisted her body, spinning away from the shadow's grasp. "No, this ends now," she screamed, the words burning in her throat as the coldness enveloping her bottom half shifted to a fiery heat of defiance. The darkness rippled, confused by her rebellion. It retreated, just for a moment, allowing her to turn towards the stairs once more. She surged forward, the wood creaking beneath her feet as she ascended 2 steps at a time, hastily glancing over her shoulder, dread pooling in her stomach. But the shadows weren't done. They pooled around the staircase's base, swirling around like smoke, solidifying into grotesque forms, faces twisted in anguish, pleading with her. "You should have stayed for a heartbeat." She hesitated, the sorrow and rage in their eyes pulling at her heart. They were lost souls, chained to the house, dragged into despair with those who had dared to enter. "Help us," they beckoned, their voices now softer, almost sorrowful. Tears stung Sarah's eyes as her heart ached with compassion, but she shook her head, realizing the danger in their siren song. "I can't help you," she cried, the struggle between empathy and terror seizing her resolve. The shadows lunged, their forms shifting rapidly, attempting to ensnare her in an icy embrace once more. Sarah dove forward, desperation fueling her movements, and stumbled up the remaining steps. Gasping for breath, she reached for the doorknob, feeling the splintering edges of her sanity. Just as she grasped the cold metal, the shadows surged, a roaring tide seeking to reclaim their prize. She flung open the door with every ounce of strength she had left, sunlight flooding into the basement, the weight of the darkness lifting slightly with the golden glow. "No!" The voices cried in unison, the rage of the lost rising like a fury against the light. She leaped through the threshold, the basement door slamming shut behind her with a shuddering finality. Heart racing, Sarah pressed her back against the wooden surface, breathing heavily, the relief of the sunlight wrapping around her like a warm blanket. But it was fleeting. The whispers seemed to seep through the cracks, curling around her like mist, vowing a return. "We'll find you, you can't escape." Overwhelmed, Sarah stumbled into the hallway, eyes darting across the gloom, half expecting to see her husband emerge from the shadows, to hear him call her name again. But there was only a chilling silence that echoed what she feared the most. "Your turn, isn't." Over a whisper echoed in her ear, colder than any winter chill. "No," she breathed, shaking her head, the weight of dread settling heavily upon her shoulders. She couldn't let herself dwell on that voice, or what it meant. Yet in the back of her mind, she questioned, what if the connection was stronger than she realized? What if that scream for help came from her husband, buried deep within those shadowy depths? She steadied herself, mind racing in panic. The stakes were higher than she thought. Standing alone in the dimly lit hallway, Sarah knew she had only delayed the inevitable horror. The doll had returned, and with it, the promise of darkness. What would she do when it came for her again? Would she be ready when the shadows called? She had to find the truth, but at what cost? And lurking just behind her, the whispers grew bolder. "You'll return. We will have our game." The shadows crackled, alive with a menace that coiled around her, chilling her to the bone. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, each beat sinking with the frantic sensation of being hunted. The unwelcome weight of the doll's gaze bore down on her from the corner of her vision, a grotesque reminder of the malevolence lurking just beyond her reach. She turned, pushing through the deafening static of her dread, trying to make sense of her surroundings. The hallway stretched before her, shrouded in darkness thick as smoke. With every step, the memories of the basement's chill clung to her skin. "Where are you?" she whispered, half pleading, half defiant, the memory of her husband's face an anchor in her slipping sanity. "David," silence answered, wide and consuming. She clenched her hands into fists, nails digging harshly into her palms as if that pain could distract her from the deeper horror. The air thickened, pregnant with a sense of impending doom. Shadows shifted, writhing along the walls. Had she really escaped? Or was this just another layer of the nightmare, a flicker of light before the total darkness descended once more? As if in response to her fear, a sharp crack echoed from behind her, soft, almost shy, like a child's laughter twisted by another's despair. Whipping around, She faced the hallway behind her, but there was nothing. No movement. Just more silence, taunting her with its stillness. The doll's laughter danced through her mind, the sinister echo melding with her own thoughts, melding with the voice of her husband. A chill coursed through her spine. "I will find you," it seemed to say, "and then we will play." Sarah sprinted down the hall, her bare feet pounding the worn wooden floor, the rhythmic sound punctuating the suffocating quiet. Doors flanked her. They loomed like sentinels, each waiting to expose their horrors. She reached for one, her fingers trembling as she twisted the knob, praying for escape. That it led into a darkened room, a forgotten study layered in dust and cobwebs. Ancient books lined the shelves, their spines cracked and peeling, bearing titles that felt like warnings. Yet, she had no time to ponder the past. She needed answers, a way to break this cycle. "David," she called again, this time louder. "If you can hear me, please give me a sign." A raspy sound met her ear, a feeble rustle barely cutting through the darkness. She turned to what appeared to be an old couch draped with a tattered blanket. Something stirred beneath it. With a deep breath, she yanked the blanket away, her pulse racing as the fabric fell away to reveal nothing but dust and memories. The shifting shadows laughed again, mocking her efforts. Panic clawed at her throat. The house was playing with her, a predator, teasing its prey. "Please," she breathed, gasping for courage. "Help me." And then it came, an unmistakable scent, like earth after rain, mixed with something sweet and rotten. It enveloped her, dragging her memories of their marriage to the surface, piecing together time in ways she didn't want to acknowledge. Suddenly, a loud bang rattled the study door. The force rattled the knob, the darkness demanding entry. "Let me in," it whispered in tones that sickened her. She stumbled back, eyes wide, desperately seeking an escape, but there was none. In that moment, a realization dashed through her like lightning. What if David was trapped in this house? What if he had succumbed to the shadows? In a swift motion, determined and desperate, Sarah rushed for the door, heart pounding. "I will find you, David. I promise," she shouted defiantly. As she swung open the door, the darkness roared, crashing against her, pushing her back, but she held firm. She had faced the shadows once. She could do so again. But would she be able to reclaim David from their grasp? And before her stood a mirror, reflecting not just her figure, but also something lurking behind her. Shadows dancing in shapes familiar, yet terrifying. "Are you ready to play?" The question dripped with malice. And just like that, Sarah knew that the game was far from over. The reflection in the mirror twisted, pulling at Sarah's sanity like an anchor, dragging it deeper into the abyss. She gasped, and the air turned icy in her lungs. The shadow behind her morphed, stretching menacingly, until she could make out twisted features, eyes like dark holes, a mouth that curled into a sinister grin. "Come play with us," it hissed, a voice oozing with promise and threat. Her heart raced, each beat reverberating in her ears, drowning out the laughter that echoed through the room. She stumbled back, feeling the cool wall press against her shoulder, panic clawing at her throat. "No, I want to," she shouted, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "I want to play this game." But the mirror grinned even wider, mocking her defiance. The shadows in the room shifted, swirling around her like a tornado, tightening their grip. She squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to block out the sight, to drown out the suffocating laughter. When she opened her eyes, she was still in the study, but the darkness felt thicker, alive with a pulse of its own. The walls began to warp, bending inward as if the house itself was breathing, inhaling her fear. "David," she whispered, the name a lifeline, a fragile tether to the sanity slipping from her grasp. "I need you. Where are you?" A sound cut through the chaos, a soft thud, like footsteps trailing up a staircase. Abruptly, the laughter ceased, replaced by a heavy stillness. She strained to listen, heart clenching as she turned toward the door she had just come through. What lay beyond? Was it her escape, or another trap? A sudden thought struck her. Maybe David wasn't lost within the shadows. Perhaps he was trying to reach her. She needed to follow that sound, that hope. Taking a deep breath to steady her shaking hands, she grabbed the doorknob, teetering on the brink of decision. The moment she stepped into the hallway, a shriek erupted from the depths of the house, raw, anguished, unmistakably human. Her blood ran cold. It was David's voice, thick with distress. The realization sent her sprinting ahead, her feet pounding against the floorboards. "David!" she cried, the desperation raw in her throat. The darkened walls closed in, churning with shadows that seemed to shout her name. She raced toward the echo of that anguished sound, her pulse hammering like a drum too loud for the night. Each room she passed felt alive, reverberating with whispers that twisted around her, filling her head with doubt. "Turn back," they hissed. "Leave this place." But she wouldn't let fear halt her. Rounding a corner, she found herself standing before an old, wooden door at the end of the hall. It loomed larger than life, its chipped paint like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. The cries were louder now, a frenzied symphony of torment. She reached for the handle, breath quickening. With a deep inhalation, she flung the door open and was blinded by white light pouring out. She shielded her eyes, stepped through, and moved into an expanse that felt cold and strange. The cries faded, and she found herself in a vast room filled with old toys, scattered on stained carpets and broken furniture. Her heart sank as memories erupted. Images of laughter, of the warmth of their home before it had twisted into this nightmare. Trembling, she moved further inside. "David?" she called again, the words slipping between dry lips. In the center of the room stood a figure hunched over. The shadows pooled, but she could make out familiar features: tousled hair, a strong frame. "David?" she called again, her voice thick with hope and fear. He turned, but the smile that emerged was twisted, his eyes empty voids. "Sarah, I found them. They're here waiting." A hot chill swept through her as she realized he wasn't alone. Behind him, countless dark shapes began to shift and swirl, reforming into the dreadful laughter of the dolls. Sarah took a step back, dread settling like a stone in her stomach. "What have you done?" she gasped. "Come join us, my love," David's voice echoed, yet his eyes betrayed a shadow of the man she knew. Panic surged through her veins. This was not the David she loved. As the dolls lurched forward, Sarah stumbled back, terror flooding her veins. She was trapped, caught in a snare of darkness, her own husband lost to the shadows that demanded their game. "Are you ready to play?" The question hung in the air like a noose, tightening around her throat. What would she risk for a chance to save him? The darkness surged, stars twinkling in the corners of her vision, and just like that, the game had shifted once again. Sarah's breath hitched as the shadows lunged. David's empty eyes bore into hers, a haunting whisper of the man she once knew. He stepped closer, the laughter of the dolls echoing around him, twisting the air into something sickening. "You never left, Sarah," he murmured, the sinister cadence wrapping around her heart like a vice. "You always belonged to them. We'll be together forever now," she screamed, her voice tearing through the suffocating darkness that threatened to consume her. "This isn't you. You have to fight them." The desperation coursed through her veins as she pushed back against the encroaching shadows, blocking out the multitude of lost souls pressing in. Suddenly, the room erupted in chaos. The dolls shrieked, their laughter a cacophony of mocking joy. "Join us," they chorused, clawing at Sarah with limbs that swirled like smoke. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. She had to reach for the light buried within her husband, wherever it may lie. Fighting back the fear threatening to overwhelm her, she stepped forward, forcing herself into David's line of sight. "Remember us," she shouted. "Remember our love. Fight. I know you're still in there." Her heart raced as the shadows shrieked in protest, shadows warping, twisting around David's form. For a second, his face flickered, his eyes widened, a flash of recognition piercing through the depths of despair. "Sarah," his voice trailed off, caught in an unnameable struggle, revealing the man he used to be. "Use the love we shared. Please," she cried, stepping nearer as the darkness ripped at her, tugging her back with violent force. But she refused to budge. "Fight it. We can escape together." Before David could respond, the air crackled with dark energy, shadows shooting forward, but the flicker of his eyes ignited a fire in her heart. She reached for him, grabbing his hands tightly, grounding him in reality. "I won't let them take you. We are stronger together." The shadows screeched, writhing, screwing tighter around her like a vice. Yet, Sarah poured every ounce of love, every cherished memory into her words. "Remember our first dance? The day we laughed until we cried? You're not just a vessel for their darkness. Fight, David. Come back to me. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from their connected hands. The shadows recoiled, hissing in anger, swirling in a violent funnel of rage. David grunted, straining against their hold, his features contorting as he battled the inner turmoil. "Sarah!" he yelled, his voice thick with desperation, but it no longer echoed hollow. "Yes, fight." Her voice trembled with hope. "You are not alone." In that moment, something inside him broke. With a roar of defiance, David pushed forward, the darkness recoiling. I'm here," he shouted, the light between them flaring brighter, banishing the shadows retreating to the corners of the room. The laughter halted, replaced by furious whispers as the dolls crumbled, their essence unraveling like threads in a tapestry. The amalgamation of shadows began to tear apart, splintering as David's true self broke free, standing tall, a phantom of the man she loved, no longer a prisoner to their game. "We'll tear this place down," he cried, shaking off the remnants of despair. Sarah's heart soared. Hope coursed through her. They could escape. Together, she urged, gripping his hand tightly as the light expanded, absorbing the darkness around them. But just as they reached the threshold, a figure lunged from the shadows, a towering presence that sent a chill skidding down her spine. It was the embodiment of despair, a mixture of everything they had faced, the heart of the house. "You can't leave," it roared, its voice like 1,000 tortured souls. But Sarah's defiance surged, pushing through the last remnants of fear. "We can and we will." She felt David's warmth radiating beside her, pouring strength into their shared light. They forged ahead, cutting through the thick malevolence that once trapped them. The moment they burst from the dark room, the house trembled, groaning under the weight of unleashed shadows. Light cascaded around them, gnawing at the walls as they raced towards the door, hearts pounding in synchronization. As they slammed through the exit, the shrill whispers faded, leaving only clarity surrounding them. They tumbled out into the moonlit night, the cold air washing over them like a cleansing tide. The weight of the house's secret failures lifted, and the binding shadows dissipated into vapor, leaving only echoes of the past. Breathless, Sarah turned to David. His familiar smile had returned, bright and unwavering. "We did it," he whispered, pulling her into an embrace. "We escaped." Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from fear but relief. Their victory echoed against the now silent house. Freedom blossomed, a testament to love and courage. "We're free," she gasped, clinging to him as the first rays of dawn crested the horizon. "There's a long road ahead," David said, his voice steady and warm. "But we'll face it together." With that affirmation, they stepped away from the shadows forever, ready to reclaim the life they had lost. No longer alone but united against whatever haunted the past. As they looked forward, the future sprawled wide and shimmering under the soft glow of hope. They were stronger than darkness. Now, if you love this unnerving yet hopeful conclusion, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. You don't want to miss out on our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and help us thrive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. We want to hear every thought spiraling in your mind. And seriously, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.